Good morning, everyone. So I wanted to drop in just a few minutes earlier, kind of just go ahead and summarize this because Jennifer's a very busy woman and I can't hold her up. So I just kind of wanted to go over, ground rules, house rules for today, and talk about a brief summary of the case in case you haven't been following along, but you are following Jennifer. Um, on Twitter, you would know that she'll be here joining us this morning. She is an expert in the investigative part of the case, and that is why I reached out to her and asked her because we have so many unanswered questions right now. Um, and she actually just tweeted a little while ago that she's a little worried that this case is going to go cold. So, with that being said, that means that we've got to do an even bigger job of what we're doing. We got to continue to put Madalina's face out there, share it on our public platforms. Um, Even if you're not from North Carolina, please still share that flyer. Um, News travels and it travels fast, and we've seen the help of social media make a difference in many cases where it just takes one video or one flyer or one tweet, um, where someone does remember something and is able to give that one tip that leads to answering, you know, where this child is. And so hopefully that is the case that we will see happen here, or, someone, does come forward and tell the truth, whether that be the parents that are in jail right now or someone else in connection to the case. Um, the biggest thing today is going to be respectful. Be respectful of Jennifer. I do want everyone to make sure that you say thank you. She is going to answer as many questions as possible. I don't have a whole lot of questions for her, um, but the ones that I do could give her an open door to answer more of the public's questions. Um, So, a brief summary of this case is Madalina went missing. Her name is Madalina Cojocaris. She went missing here in North Carolina from Cornelius. If you're not familiar with Cornelius, it is a very small town. We're talking very small. I've got videos of me going to feed the police officers, and I thought the town was absolutely adorable. The cutest little town that I think I've ever seen. And I told my husband I want to live in a town like this because it just you can feel um, a tight knit community. It's just a cute town. Um, so this is one of those towns where things like this just don't happen. Um, and we're talking an 11-year-old is not a normal case that we see either. But it was 22 days before this child would be reported missing, and it was at the hands of the school catching warning signs that we were able to even be alerted that Madalina was missing. And being 22 days in, that's 3 weeks behind, and usually the most informative time for these cases is 24 to 48 hours. So that kind of leaves us with not a whole lot to go off of. We know mom has had conflicting stories from the moment that she, went to the school. She, immediately through the arrest sheet, we could see that she told 3 different stories in just, a matter of time. Um, that to me is a big red flag. There's lots of theories, lots of speculation. I usually don't go with that. I usually try to stick with the facts. However, in this case, there's not a whole lot of facts for us to go off of. There hasn't been a whole lot released. We, were able to look at search warrants, which we're going to discuss with Jennifer. We were able to look at search warrants, and in those search warrants, it was all redacted. Like it was heavily, heavily redacted. And, we're talking, I know that the public, that one of those search warrants did go around that had the 3 iPhones on it, but there's also another one. So altogether, out of the search warrants, there's over 40 items that are redacted. Um, and so to me, that says that there's a lot that we don't know. And so I'm hoping that Jennifer might give us a little more, insight into what possibly law enforcement does know, um, how they, if they've handled this in the way that most people would, if, um, or how most law enforcement agencies would. I do want to talk about the possibility of her being taken back across, um, because that came up last night, and just I was looking over, messages this morning, and I was like, we're just going to ask about this, because I know in the beginning the consulate and the embassy was both involved, but that was only for a couple of days, and then they were removed from the case. So my assumption was that, that was not what happened, that she had not been moved back to the Republic of Moldova. So we will question that. I'm so nervous, you guys, but excited at the same time to be able to give these answers. Because I know a lot of people, don't understand. This may be their first case or first time being involved in a case in the true crime community, and there's a lot of things that are withheld in these investigations, not to hinder them. And sometimes that's frustrating for the public, especially if you are new and you don't know that this is customary. This is something that tends to happen in cases where they are, where the social media is involved. And that is, over the last couple of years, because of social media being targeted, and we have to remember that, we also have to remember that families watch and have to read, and I don't know how Jennifer does it all. She's retired, but it's more like retired-ish, because she, if you follow her on Twitter, she covers about all of the cases, and I don't know how she does it. I know that, she was up early this morning already, and she was posting. She did catch a pretty big um, conflict of interest in the Brian Koberger case, the Idaho 4 case. So if you don't follow her on Twitter, I would suggest that you do go follow her so that you can be up to date. She will also be joining Sleuthy on Twitter Spaces to talk about that conflict of interest at 11 Eastern Standard Time. So I'm going to go over there. Yes, addicted. I was happy for that. And that is how I found Jennifer and started following Jennifer, was through the Gabby Petito case. I would follow her when she would be on News Station with Brian Enton, and I watch her when she's on Duty Ron. I enjoy what she brings to the table. Tammy, could you please grab the share button and go post this in our chat, in the Where's Madalina chat, please? Because I forgot to when I went live. She is amazing. So right now, it is a busy time. We have Madalina's case going on, the Marda murder is going on. I do it every time, you guys. And then we have, you're listening. Good morning. I didn't know you was here, Sluggy, or I would have got you to share it. We, and then, now the Brian Koberger, we just, the Athena, today is Athena's um, memorial service, her celebration of life. Um, more like Burr. I every time I want to say Murdo, and I don't know. I don't know if it's just because that Murdahl murders, just it kind of comes out that way. But he is back in court again this morning. There's live coverage of that, and Jennifer is here, so we're going to go ahead and bring her up.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Good morning. Thank you
Good
for
morning.
joining us. I was just giving everyone a brief summary of what is going on, and told them that they needed to be following you because you put out some big news this morning with the Brian Koberger case.
Oh, yes, what a mess that is.
That is. So I seen that this morning, so I'm going to follow over when you and Sleuthy are doing the Twitter spaces. So basically, there's so many questions. We do, like you said, we have a big following on Facebook and it is doing big things, but there's still a lot of questions with things being so quiet on Madalina's case. And I just wanted your expert opinion on why that might be, kind of explain the investigative part for the people who are not familiar with, how these things go, why they are so tight-lipped, why things are sealed.
Right.
The biggest red flags that you have come across during following this case. I know you're sharing it, and it's just one of those cases where, yeah, you can't help but want to scream from the rooftops.
Yeah, it's a heartbreaking case, and thank you for having me here. I always think it's so important that the more people you touch with cases like this, the more possibility they will stay alive. If you look at Summer Wells's case, and your audience may be familiar with this little girl from Tennessee, it has gone ice cold. And a big part of that is the fact that the media is no longer engaged, social media is no longer engaged. And with this case of Madalina, it's so important right now. We're at a very critical time that her case remains in social media and her case remains in mainstream media. Because if not, law enforcement is not as compelled possibly to work as hard. And it's not that they're not compelled. They want to solve this case. The officers working on this case behind the scenes are invested, but other matters come up, other priorities get shifted. And when we can keep these cases in the media, the shift usually goes toward media intense cases. So why you're seeing things so quiet right now on this case can either be very good or not very good. As you know, they did do a search warrant at her house. There was information regarding items being burned, shortly after the disappearance. And I think that's all a very good sign. I think that they are looking at indicia of this crime, looking for that in the house as well as in the backyard. And I think this hiatus may be good because remember, so much is going to be sent to the lab, and it just takes a while to get those results back.
Yeah, I know that the one search warrant, kind of went, out, and everybody, with the 3 iPhones, and there was 20 some items redacted, but there was other search warrants as well. So there's actually way more redacted than what I think everyone realizes. One of the biggest things right now is, and I know that in the beginning, the consulate and the embassy were involved, but that was only for a couple of days, and they took them off of the case. So now the question has been brought up again: could she have been sent back across the waters? But my assumption with them taking off, the embassy and the consulate and no longer needing to call them, that wouldn't have been the case. What is the likelihood that could have happened and, went unknown?
I think it's very unlikely.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I think this is a case that could be very similar to Harmony Montgomery. to Oakley Carlson, where these parents have done something horrific to Madalina. I am keeping my hopes, like all of us, and you always have to have the hope that she's alive and well. But I think it's clear she is not across the ocean and wasn't trafficked abroad. It seems to me very clear these parents had a role. And I think the good news is, as they continue to spend time behind bars, I would expect her mother to hopefully turn state's evidence and cooperate in this matter over time.
So, a couple of things that were in the arrest sheet, the original arrest sheet. And something that also needs to be noted is there was only one sheet released to the public, and that was page 5. So we don't know what was in the other, because it was 6 pages altogether. So we don't know what's in the other 5 pages. We just have a brief summary in that arrest sheet. It's not word for word, correct?
Yeah, I think again, this is a good sign. As an example, when you see a warrant return being redacted, to me, that tells me that there were items that were recovered that are inculpatory. And that's good news for this case. It's just, I think they don't want uh, the information out there because I think it's heart-wrenching and sad what could have been recovered. And they don't want everyone jumping to conclusions until they have the appropriate lab results back.
So that is, right now that's pretty much what we're sitting here waiting for is those lab results. So upon those lab results, that's when, we will be able to, hopefully see more charges, because right now they're only indicted to the grand jury on Kaylee's law. Could you talk a little bit about Kaylee's law and what that means and why not every state applies that law?
Yes, this is a wonderful law that was put in place, obviously due to the Casey Anthony case, where her daughter, she didn't report her daughter missing. And of course, that led to a huge lag time in terms of the investigation. Whenever you have a huge lag time, days are just critical. Evidence is lost, evidence is hidden, evidence is ruined and adulterated. And because of that, this law came into place, which is just amazing. Unfortunately, it's a state by state consideration. So each state has the ability to enact such laws, but all states haven't. And I think in this case, we are so lucky that she is in a state, or this occurred in a state that does have this law. And that's why they're behind bars. And although the statute doesn't allow for a huge amount of jail time, this gives law enforcement time to not only investigate this case, but also keep these individuals who might be very dangerous to the community behind bars, and also keeps them from possibly changing, hiding, otherwise adulterating evidence. They've already had plenty of time between when she went missing and when she was reported, unfortunately.
Now, another question that, has played a big part for me is that Diana, originally she had 3 different stories right off the bat. And then we get, to the fact that she says that her and Chris argued on the 23rd, but Chris is in Michigan on the night of the 23rd, or arriving in Michigan on the night of the 23rd. So if that, comes back, and that is proven, and they have ways of proving that, correct? Like they would go by the phone pings, cameras, toll booths, all of those things would say, yes, he was here. He couldn't have had an argument with you on the 23rd. Is that a situation where we're going to see more of those charges like we've seen with Leilani Simon, where, the lies come into play and is another charge for Diana?
Absolutely. Look, when you give 3 different stories to the authorities, they are just mounting their evidence right now to charge false charges, false reporting. However, it's such a huge indication as to who is liable for what happened to her, where their needle needs to be pointing. Parents don't lie about where their children are when they are not involved and complicit in their disappearance. So law enforcement is headed in the right direction. They know the needle needs to be pointed in the direction of these parents. And by her continued lying and these false statements, it's great for law enforcement because they can have other charges they can charge if necessary.
Okay. And then, she states that, when he left, she checked on her on the morning of the final story was that she checked on her at 11:30 the morning of the 24th. And instead of calling, she waited for Chris to come home. To me, that was like the biggest red flag. Why would you not immediately pick up your phone just to say, hey, did you happen to take Madalina with you to see your family? Instead of sitting there for 3 days, and what she did for those, I mean, that might have been the time that she took her trip to the mountains. That report did come out, but that we have not gotten a definite date on that, or an update on that. They may have narrowed down that specific date of her being in the mountains.
Look, her whole, and not just that story, every story stinks, and it stinks because it's untruthful. And she's just, I describe it as a big dog on a wet linoleum floor. She's just scrambling and saying whatever is coming out of her mouth to try to make sense of a situation that doesn't make sense, because the truth does not change. If she were
Right.
telling the truth, it would be a set story with a set of facts. But instead, she's trying to explain, and she's calculating and thinking about what she's going to say and revising as necessary under her false impression that she can somehow fool law enforcement. And she's not fooling law enforcement, and she's not fooling any of us, because we have common sense. We know what parents who are grieving, who have lost their children, who are missing, act like. And she's only bearing herself with these lies. And unfortunately, when she does come full circle, and I think she might in time, and tell the truth, the horrible details of what really transpired, unfortunately, it's going to be somewhat tainted by all of these lies that she's told. However, just like in the Harmony Montgomery case with Kaylee Montgomery, the truth bears itself out because they're going to be able to corroborate the real facts once those come out.
Now, with the indictment into the grand jury, what does that look like? And what would go forth from there? Let's say if, what is the probability of that being successfully tried? And,
Are you talking about specifically murder charge? Or are you talking
right
about
now it's not. Right now it's just the, failure to do it. But let's say, she's not found. What happens from that point? Whether she is found. And I hate to think of it in the way that, everyone is probably thinking at this point, but, what if there is a body found? What happens at that point?
Well, let's look at it as if there isn't a body found, right? They are going to be looking right now at all the evidence they've received from these search warrants and trying to add up a situation with what they found. Have they found hair? Have they found blood? Have they found indicia of her being hurt or harmed or deceased? Have they found any tools that could have been used? Has there been blood spatter that was wiped down? All these things are going to look at. A great case to look at that possibly could be similar is the Anna Walsh case. It's an adult, but in that case, her husband was charged without a body, and they likely will not find the body because of how he disposed of her probably in all these different locations. He made 4 dumpster runs and they only retrieved from 1 dumpster. I only veer to that as an analogy of what could be happening here. In other words, they're trying to build a case as to whether she even, whether she was harmed. How the process works is like this. There are 3 ways to charge somebody. You can charge by an information, you can charge by a criminal complaint, or you can charge by indictment. And information usually means the party is cooperating. Attorneys are working on the exact charges. They're all written down. Both parties agree. The individual submits to come in. It's usually in white-collar cases. In a case like this, a criminal complaint is often filed, and that's because it's very fast-moving. It's reactive to the information you get. And so as a law enforcement officer, we go and we write down all the facts, looking at the law and figuring out what we are saying the probable cause exists for. In this case, it was a violation of not reporting. So they write down this complaint, and then the person is able to be charged and arrested. The third process that often comes after a criminal complaint, and sometimes comes before a criminal complaint, if it's not as fast moving, is the indictment process. This is where a grand jury convenes and they look at information over time. These are just everyday citizens, like what make up a jury pool. And they are seated specifically to look at all the information. Then they will evaluate whether a true bill should be issued, meaning they are believe there's probable cause that this person committed this crime, or a no bill, which means they don't think there was probable cause. So that's the process. How it works is literally you have the prosecutor just bringing up witness after witness and introducing document after document for these jurors to consider on their own behind closed doors. They're completely secret. Once a true bill is returned, if it is, then that is made public that, you know, the individual has been charged with a crime. Does that help kind of delineate what these processes are?
So yes, that would make it easier for everyone to understand. So the grand jury makes the decision as to whether they go forward with the charges.
Yes.
So again, right now they're just sitting there waiting to find out if they can be charged with potentially Kaylee's law. Now, speaking of attorneys, is it I mean, because we know that Chris's attorney has brought in a private investigator. Is that something you would normally see with a court-appointed attorney?
Yes, it really is. There's usually funding for investigators. There's funding for expert witnesses. There's funding that allows for the defense to have an exact equal opportunity to defend their client that the prosecution has. And that's fair, and it's innate within our system. And it's why our system is so great and why we have so few innocent people go to prison. Still happens, but it's extremely rare, especially considering other countries. So yes, in answer to your question, it's normal.
And then what kind of plea deals could, they be offered at this point, to hopefully get them to talk, either one of them to speak at this point. And they may be, we don't know, but let's say they're not. What kind of plea deals could be put on the table?
Well, the prosecution has a menu of charges they could charge. They've already charged Kaylee's law. In addition, they could charge false statements, false reporting, these smaller charges to the person who cooperates, and not charge them with more extreme charges that could end up being involved if Kaylee never is found. Or I'm sorry, if Madalina is never found. So that's what they're working with. What would they do? It's hard to say. it's going to depend on A, the level of cooperation, B, the level of proof that they can use to corroborate those charges, and C, how long it takes. Are they forthright and giving information earlier on, or is this going to take, years? At that point, the prosecution likely has been able to build their case without the party that would cooperate. But in cases like this, typically the prosecution does want that witness to spell out what happened.
Right. And I think the only other really big thing, and you pretty much touched base off on it right off the bat, was the fire pit. And you felt like it was, to get rid of evidence. We don't know all the details of that. There's plenty of rumors like the couch, and I've been there. I've seen this fire pit with my own eyes. It's just the probability of a couch or even a love seat being burned. One, I don't think would be possible for anyone to see from the location. Two, I think that would have that, you can literally just see the trees and it's right up against a fence. It would have, caused so much more damage to the area. But smaller things that I would think would be, book bag, clothes, things that she said was missing from the home. But what are your thoughts on that? Could there actually be those larger items burned in such a small area?
No. So a couple of things. First of all, we don't know that that's what that fire pit was used for, but it's possible. When you look at the timing, it certainly looks suspicious. So I believe law enforcement will comb over that fire pit with a fine-tooth comb. You cannot burn things typically out of existence. They're going to be remnants left behind. And a good team of evidence collectors will collect everything, and a good lab will be able to sort out at least some remnants, if indeed, as you said, clothes were burned, anything to do with a tool that might have been used was burned, or any other indicia of the crime, blankets, comforters, whatever might have been used if indeed she was harmed in that house. So I think that they will take a very close look. And this is something criminals often do. They try to burn the evidence that's involved in the crime, thinking it will completely disappear. So I'm positive that law enforcement will be looking at this long and hard.
And then just overall, what are your thoughts of the case right now? Like, is there anything that has really stood out to you to make you feel a certain way from an investigator? I mean, you did this forever, and I don't think you've actually hung your hat up yet. So, if you were working this case, what would be your overall thought at this moment or at the beginning?
Well, I always say when in the cases I have right now, where I'm an expert witness, I get to see everything. The curtain is completely pulled back, and there's nothing I don't see. So it's always very easy to make an expert opinion when you have all the facts before you. When I do analyst work, I don't have but a smidgen of the facts, just like you all have. There's a lot of digging, though, that can be done often in public record forums where people can find things that you might not think you would be able to find. Obviously, social media is the big one, where people make mistakes, where people mess up their timelines compared to what they say. There's lots of little nuggets. So I always like to look at that. But back to your real question is, what would be my initial impression? Initially, I would be so impressed with the lack of cooperation, all the lies, the inconsistent statements of Madalina's mother. That is a red flag to any investigators. And that's been a red flag to these investigators. I believe, sadly, based on the totality of what we do know, that something horrific happened to Madalina at the hands of these parents. And unfortunately, that is my initial impression. As I said, I pray about this little girl, just like Summer, and I hope, against all hope, that she will be found alive. But as time goes on, as months go by, that probability gets less and less. So I really turn the effort, to me, needs to be turned toward working on her mother to cooperate with law enforcement and let people know the truth so that charges can be filed.
There wasn't a whole lot of questions in the chat today that we didn't pretty much cover. But one of them was, do you feel like social media helps or hinders the active investigations? I feel like right now that's kind of up in the air, especially, with the lawsuit against, a TikToker. But from your opinion, as you can see both sides of it, as an investigator and as a social media activist, what do you feel about the social media impact in these cases?
I think the social media impact in this case and in all cases is a positive thing. Not everybody subscribes to this, but true sleuths that work behind the scenes trying to dig up positive information, the first thing they typically do with that information is supply it to law enforcement. And often, because law enforcement is just limited, there's not the thousands and millions of bodies of social media sleuths within the ranks of law enforcement. You're putting extra eyes and extra keyboards on these issues. I think it is extremely positive. I can't tell you how many DMs I get a day of people who don't want to be exposed. They just want to get information out to authorities and to be looked at as possibly needing to go to the media so it can be looked into more closely. I think social media sleuths are the future. I think that law enforcement needs to configure how they do law enforcement. I think every department, I think the Bureau, all federal law enforcement should have particular analysts, at least one or two, and that's all they do is look at social media clues, inferences, people who say, oh my gosh, this person posted this, I'm afraid they might commit a crime. Just think of all the crimes we would have thwarted. I'll give you one, the New York City subway. He, saying to anyone who would listen about his intentions. Yet that wasn't looked at. So we need to be more proactive. And that's what social media does. The individuals that give a bad name to cyber sleuths are, and I could name them, but I won't, are the people that the only reason they do this is to find salacious news and put it out on their social media platforms for money. They don't even verify anything, and they tamper with witnesses. This isn't about helping law enforcement, it's about helping themselves. So that's the distinguishing mark. That's where I stand on it. I think it's much more positive than negative, but I think there's devils out there.
Right. I feel the same way. And as far as like there's a lot of things that, and I tell people, I might drop you guys some hints, whether you pick up on those hints as to things that I have verified, that's on you guys. And in this case, I have a couple, and I call her my partner in crime on this case, and we've uncovered a lot, but we've not put it out there because it could be a very big hindrance to either A, finding her, or the right person or persons being at fault.
Yeah, I think it's important to put forth information, and some information, all you can do is put forth what it points to in your view, your 360-degree view based on everything you personally know. And each of your audience members, each of the people in this Facebook group has their own information that they've uncovered, has their own reference of experience where something might be mean something more to them because where they work, their experience they've been through personally, and all of that factors into being able to determine whether this is a truth or whether it is a conjecture. And to be frank, until law enforcement says it's true, because they have all the tools, subpoena authority, search warrant authority, they have all the tools to know. None of us know for a complete certainty, but certainly there's factors that come together that make things a very high probability when you're trying to determine facts in Madalina's case.
One of the what with the story of the mountains, what is the likelihood that Diana did just drop her off with another local family or someone that she knew in those mountains? And I've done the Google Earth search. There's not a whole lot living out there of where, Diana was located. So
I find the story ridiculous, to be honest. This is not what a parent does. This is a school-aged little girl. This is something she's never done in the past. There's nothing that adds up. This is, I believe, was in the third story. Correct me if I'm wrong. Story after story to try to find a narrative that law enforcement will accept, and they're not going to accept it because none of it's true.
Now, the well, that one I don't. That one would just start. I mean, I think you've covered all of my questions, and some of them in the chat. I don't think they. I think you might have already answered them in a roundabout way, anyways. And I think that it's just such a perplexed case, and it's unique because we don't usually see it happening with an 11-year-old. This is, usually something where we see in the toddler age versus, an 11-year-old. And how you would think you would not get caught. I don't know.
Well, it's a complete system failure. It's a complete system failure. The schools and neighbors and the community need to get more active. Everybody in that neighborhood that had children on that bus, that met their child at the bus, or that had friends that were on the bus, people would have noticed she was not on that bus. People would have noticed she wasn't in school. Yes, they made calls. Yes, they reached out. More needs to be done. A wellness check should have been called into local law enforcement well in advance of 3 weeks. 3 weeks was way too big of a hiatus.
So something that hasn't been put out, and I meant to message you that this person is protected, but there was actually excused days in there where someone was making that call that she was sick. So when the truancy was actually filed, it with so many excused days, it wasn't actually truant. she wasn't actually truant with so many excused days. But then once those phone calls quit coming in, there was a red flag, there was warning signs, and honestly, I believe someone tipped the school at that point. Um, this is a large subdivision, there's not a lot there, so a majority of the town are in these subdivisions. So I think that there was some things that came to light during that time. um but
I see what you're saying. Uh, and yes, there are certain parameters around truancy. It varies with each school district, but I believe if there were tighter regulations and SOPs, standard operating procedures related to children that just don't come to school without follow-up, without some sort of indication that they're truly sick beyond a few days. I just think that needs to be tightened up. I think it needs to be tightened up because children come first. And if they were tightened up, some of these cases that we're seeing possibly could have been at least solved earlier.
Right. Unless there's anything else that you can think of that is of importance to the case, I don't think I have any more questions. I think that from the investigative part of it, people are going to understand a lot more now from this interview, and I can't thank you enough for helping. So
Well, I'm going to continue to, I think I wrote shout from the hills on this case. I don't want to see another Summer Wells case go cold. And I would just challenge everybody in this Facebook group, in this chat, challenge everybody to use all your social media platforms. If you're on Twitter, if you're on TikTok, if you're on Instagram, to keep her face, her name out there. Also, you never know who might have seen something, that doesn't even realize they saw something. Someone who was at a trash dumpster early that morning in the neighborhood. I'm not saying this is the facts, but I'm just giving an analogy. Somebody saw something and it was early in the morning and they thought it was odd. And it looks like it could be one of the parents. And now they see the picture and, oh, sure enough, or the car or something like that. So it's very important to keep the information out there. The example I always use is Gabby Petito and the Bethunes. But for social media, putting that van out there and her kind of saying, geez, I think I saw that van once on one of our recordings, and flipping back and looking, Gabby Petito's murder, who knows when and if that body would have been found as deep into the Grand Teton Mountains as it was. And then, there wouldn't have been a case, or it would have been a very difficult case to solve without a body. So it's very important, everybody. And I just want to thank you for asking me here, and your members in your audience. I hope you follow me at Coffin Daffer FBI. I'll be continuing to monitor and talk about this case, as well as, of course, the Idaho 4 case and many others.
Yes, I'm going to be there to listen in on that conflict of interest in the Brian Kohberger case. Unique find. And you guys, I will in the description put Jennifer's handle so that you can just click on it and go to her Twitter if you're not already following her. And again, I thank you so much for everything that you do on all of these cases. Even though you've turned over, you haven't given up, and you still continue to work so hard for these cases, and it's an inspiration.
Well, it's a passion, that's for sure. And again, thank you. And if I can ever be of any help, please reach out. And I pray Madalina is found soon.
Yes, thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. So you guys, whew, that was I enjoyed that. I enjoyed having Jennifer Coffindaffer on my panel. A lot of questions that have been asked that we couldn't, give a definite answer on. Jennifer was able to give us from that investigative perspective, and I hope that it helps if you've had those questions and weren't understanding, us in the way that we put those. If you're following certain creators and you're trying to, piece together things, like she said that, she believes that the true crime community makes a difference in the social, with the social media aspect of it. It's also in the way that it is done. And I think she's having trouble getting off. It's in the way that that is handled. If you're pushing the facts and you are just pushing those faces and those names and the the stories that have come from law enforcement, then I don't know what's going on with it. It is a positive, and it brings a positive light to these cases. It's I if there's anything you guys want to go over, I do have a video dropping, a pre-recorded video dropping, where it will just be the facts of the timeline and the conflicts that were in those stories. It's kind of broken down a little bit easier for everyone to understand that timeline, that arrest sheet that came out, what has happened since, and while we're sitting here waiting, right now that's kind of all we can do is just wait. Jennifer, she is a retired FBI agent, and she kind of became well known during the Gabby Petito case, but she literally just she didn't retire completely. Like she says, she now just does like the expert witnesses. I would love to see her in a courtroom as an expert witness. I think she brings a lot of good light to these cases. So, is there anything that we missed that you guys did want to ask? Because I can always reach out to her if there was something we missed. If I don't know the answer, she'll gladly respond. Thank you guys. I knew that she would be like the one. I knew that she'd been following Madalina's case. I knew that she had a little bit of passion for it. Well, she actually has a lot of passion for every case she covers. And like I was saying, she did catch something in the Brian Koberger case that they will be talking about on Sleuthy's Twitter Spaces, or either Jennifer, one of the two. They're going together. They're going to be doing the what has come to light with the attorney of Brian Koberger and Xana Kernodle's mother. I am excited. I was so nervous. Oh my goodness, you guys. I was so nervous to have Jennifer Coffindaffer. Next time I will be good. And you guys, I missed chats that were coming in because I was trying to stay focused, because y'all know that 9 times out of 10 I'm squirreled, but I will get those answers. Um, I'll reach out to her after her 11 o'clock meeting and ask her any questions that I can't answer. Some things I can't answer. Um, D, isn't it crazy? Like, all right, you guys. Uh, well, it's something that I've also. I mean, you guys have stated. You've heard me state myself that social media can do good in these cases when it's done the right way. So, um, it, knowing those facts is the biggest thing. Knowing the facts. Not just guessing, because it's becoming a big case. Yes, yes. Carry that torch, you guys. Carry the torch. Be a light, and fortunately, the darkness that surrounds us these days. So I tried uploading it last night and did not realize that my husband had come and gotten the Wi-Fi to put it closer to his PlayStation. So I was sitting up here in the bedroom for hours and thought I was just going crazy. And Tammy, I know that you had asked about the family stating, between North Carolina and Michigan. I have verified that that was not. That was, a niece who put out that information. Unfortunately, it was a misunderstanding, and that is why the family had things taken down, why the family is not speaking out. And I don't blame them. They were immediately attacked, and that happens in every case. And I wish we. Um, I don't know. I don't know that I. Hold on. Let me see if I can get it, you guys, and drop it. If Sleuthy's here, Sleuthy, can you drop the link to the Twitter Spaces so that we can listen in? Wait, what? What did I say? Sleuthy, what did I say? I don't remember. I got distracted looking for the Twitter Spaces. I can't find it. Oh, there you go. There's the link for the Twitter Spaces. Sleuthy is on top of it. It's good to see you back over here, Sleuthy. And I will be listening in on that Twitter Space this morning. Like, I didn't cover the case, but I have followed it closely, and this changes things. All right, you guys. So I'm going to try to have that drop this afternoon, this evening, around 5 or 6. I'm sorry, Wheezy. You guys, I could not sleep at all last night, so I will be taking a good old nap today, because that is like day 4 or 5 that I have not slept. No, 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 no. I know you haven't attacked anyone, but it happens in these cases, unfortunately. Um, I mean, and the sad part is they're not even here. It's not like they would know what happened. So, oh Megan, it is okay. It is okay. All right, you guys. So I think that we'll wrap it up. It was a good morning. Um, and hopefully Madalina's face gets out more. If you have not, if you're new to this story, please start sharing. We, we're doing all we can. Um, but we appreciate the help that you guys have given us. We appreciate the ones that have covered this case, who have helped us find some information. Um, so, guys, there's still hope. There's still hope. All right, you guys, I will see you guys on the other side.